Desta thought she was being careful when she snuck food from her employer's kitchen, but Tamin Park noticed everything. The cold-hearted mafia king had perfected the art of observation during years of dangerous business dealings. But watching this proud, beautiful woman sacrifice everything for 3 orphan children cracked something open inside his frozen heart. He made her a shocking proposal that would change both their lives, never imagining that their fake marriage would ignite a passion neither could control. Tamin Park stood in the shadows of his kitchen doorway, watching his new maid wrap leftover food in aluminum foil with shaking hands. Most people would have confronted her immediately, fired her on the spot, maybe even called the police. But Tamin hadn't built his empire by making hasty decisions. He observed, calculated, and struck when the moment was right. Desta moved quickly, her dark skin glistening with nervous sweat under the bright kitchen lights. She glanced over her shoulder twice, then carefully placed containers of rice, chicken, and vegetables into her worn canvas bag. Her fingers trembled as she zipped it closed, and Tamin noticed the way her shoulders sagged with what looked like relief mixed with shame. She slipped out the servant's entrance at exactly 11:30, just like she had for the past week. Tamin had noticed the missing food 4 days ago. His head of security wanted to install cameras, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Desta cleaned his house with such careful attention, treating his possessions like they were precious. Maybe it was how she never asked for anything extra, never tried to make conversation, just did her work and disappeared like a ghost. Tonight, he decided to follow her. The Los Angeles streets were wet from earlier rain, reflecting the neon signs and streetlights like a mirror. Desta walked fast, clutching her bag close to her body, her head down. She didn't take the bus even, though the stop was right there. She walked 12 blocks through neighborhoods that got progressively worse, where the buildings were tagged with graffiti and groups of men stood on corners watching everyone who passed. Tamin kept his distance, his black coat blending into the shadows. He'd grown up on streets worse than these in Seoul before clawing his way to power. These dangers didn't frighten him, but watching Desta navigate them alone made something protective stir in his chest. She finally stopped at a building that should have been condemned years ago. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. Broken windows on the ground floor were covered with cardboard. Desta climbed the external stairs to the 3rd floor, her footsteps echoing in the quiet night. Tamin moved closer, staying hidden behind a dumpster across the street. The apartment Desta entered had a light on, and through the thin curtains, he could see movement. He pulled out his phone, zoomed in with the camera, and what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. 3 children sat at a small table that wobbled on uneven legs. The oldest couldn't have been more than 8, a girl with her hair in neat braids. 2 boys, maybe 5 and 6, sat beside her, their eyes huge with hunger. Desta unpacked the food, and the children's faces lit up like she'd brought them treasure instead of leftovers. Tamin watched as Desta divided the food carefully, giving the children the larger portions while taking barely anything for herself. She smiled at them, said something that made them laugh, and ruffled the smallest boy's hair with such tenderness that Tamin felt his chest tighten. The girl said something, and Desta's smile faltered. She shook her head, pulled the girl close, and kissed her forehead. Even from this distance, Tamin could see the weight of responsibility crushing her shoulders. He stayed there for 20 minutes. Watching this woman he'd barely noticed transform into someone completely different. At his mansion, she was quiet, invisible, efficient. Here she was everything to these children, their whole world. When Desta finally glanced toward the window, Tamin stepped back into deeper shadows. She couldn't know he was there. Not yet. He had thinking to do, plans to make. He returned to his car and sat there for a long moment, staring at that broken building. His ex-fiancée Soo Jin had betrayed him 6 months ago, running off with his former business partner and $500,000. She'd shattered something inside him, made him trust no one, believe in nothing but power and money. But this woman, this maid who was stealing his food, She was doing it for love, for family, for survival. Tamin drove home slowly, his mind racing. He'd built his empire through calculated risks and cold decisions. He'd earned his reputation as someone you didn't cross, someone who showed no mercy. But watching Desta with those children had cracked something open inside, him that he thought Soo-jin had destroyed forever. The next morning he left extra food in the refrigerator. Roasted duck, expensive side dishes, fresh fruit. He made sure Desta saw him leave for his office early, then waited in his study upstairs, watching through the security monitor he'd had installed overnight in the kitchen. Desta came in to clean at 9. She moved through her routine, dusting, organizing, wiping down counters. When she opened the refrigerator, she froze. Her hand reached out, touched the containers of food, then pulled back like she'd been burned. She looked around the kitchen, confusion and fear crossing her face. Then she carefully closed the refrigerator and went back to cleaning, not taking a single thing. Tamin smiled, proud, stubborn, refusing charity even when she was desperate. He found himself watching her throughout the day, really seeing her for the first time. She was beautiful in a way he hadn't let himself notice before, tall and graceful with high cheekbones and full lips. Her eyes were the color of warm honey, and when she thought no one was looking, they filled with a sadness that matched his own. That evening he stayed home instead of going to his usual business dinner. He sat in the living room, pretending to read reports on his tablet, but really listening to Desta move through the house. She worked until 8, then gathered her things to leave. "The food in the refrigerator," he said, not looking up from his tablet. "Take it." Desta froze in the doorway. "Sir? I ordered too much. It will spoil." He kept his voice casual, still not meeting her eyes. "Waste is foolish." The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled tight. "I cannot accept," she finally said, her accented English soft but firm. Now he looked at her. "Why not? It is not right." "What's not right is wasting food." He stood, crossing to where she stood rigid by the door. Up close, she was even more striking. "I'm not offering charity. I'm being practical. Take it or I'll throw it away." Her jaw clenched. Pride and need warred in her eyes. "Thank you, but no." She left before he could argue, and Tamin found himself frustrated in a way he hadn't been in months. She'd rather let those children stay hungry than accept what she thought was pity. He called his head of security. "I need information on my maid. Everything, family, background, why she's in Los Angeles." The report came back within 3 hours. Desta Haile, 26 years old, from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Parents deceased. Came to America 4 years ago on a work visa. Her brother and his wife died in a car accident 8 months ago, leaving 3 children. She'd taken them in, became their legal guardian. Working 3 jobs to pay rent, buy food, save for their schooling. No criminal record. No debt except what she owed for her brother's funeral. Tamin read the report twice, his respect for her growing with each line. She was working herself into an early grave for children who weren't even hers by blood. She could have sent them to foster care, made her life easier. Instead, she'd sacrificed everything. That night he followed her again. Watched her bring the children new crayons and paper, probably bought with money she should have spent on food for herself. Watched her help them with homework at that wobbly table, her patience endless even though she must have been exhausted. When she finally tucked them into the single bed they all shared, singing something soft in a language he didn't understand. Tamin made his decision. He would help her, but not with charity. Desta's pride wouldn't accept that. He needed to offer something she couldn't refuse, something that would benefit them both. By the time he returned to his mansion, the plan was fully formed. It was risky, maybe even crazy. His business associates would think he'd lost his mind. But for the first time since Soo-jin's betrayal, he felt something other than cold emptiness. He felt alive. The next evening, Desta was dusting his office when he came home early. She startled, nearly dropping the cloth in her hand. I need to speak with you, he said, closing the door behind him. Sit down. Sir, I should not. Sit. It wasn't a request. She perched on the edge of the leather chair across from his desk, her back straight, hands folded in her lap, waiting for the axe to fall. She thought he was going to fire her for stealing. Tamin sat on the edge of his desk, deliberately casual. I have a problem. I need a solution. I think you can help me. Confusion flickered across her face. I do not understand. My ex-fiancée won't leave me alone. She wants me back, but I want nothing to do with her. I need her to believe I've moved on completely. Desta's expression remained carefully neutral. I am sorry for your trouble, but I do not see how. Marry me. Desta's honey-colored eyes went wide with shock. For 3 long seconds, she didn't move, didn't breathe. Just stared at Tamin like he'd grown a second head. Then she stood up so fast the chair rolled backward. You are joking, she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. I never joke about business. Tamin crossed his arms, watching her face carefully. This would be a business arrangement, a contract marriage for 1 year. You are serious? It wasn't a question. Desta backed toward the door, shaking her head. No, this is crazy. I clean your house, that is all. Desta, wait. He moved to block her path, but kept his distance, hands raised in a peaceful gesture. Just hear me out. 5 minutes. If you still want to leave after that, I won't stop you. She hesitated, her hand on the doorknob, every muscle tense like a rabbit ready to bolt. But something in his face made her pause. Maybe it was the lack of cruelty there, or the strange honesty in his dark eyes. 5 minutes, she agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. Tamin gestured to the chair. This time she remained, standing so he did too, maintaining space between them. My ex-fiancée Soo Jin stole from me and destroyed my trust. Now she's back, claiming she made a mistake, showing up at my office and home. She's making my life difficult. Call the police. It's not that simple. Her family has connections, and I have business deals that would be complicated by that kind of public drama. He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. If I'm married, she'll have to accept it's over. She'll move on. There are many women who would marry you, Desta pointed out, still wary. Rich women. Women from your world. True, but they would want a real marriage, or they would expect things I can't give. You need something too. I know about the children. Desta went very still. How do you know? I followed you. I saw them. He held up a hand when she opened her mouth to protest. Before you get angry, I needed to understand why you were taking food. I don't tolerate theft, but I needed to know the reason. Her cheeks flushed with shame and anger. So you know I am a thief. You should fire me. You're not a thief. You're desperate. There's a difference. Tamin picked up a folder from his desk and held it out to her. This is what I'm offering. Desta didn't take it. I do not want your charity. It's not charity, it's a job. He opened the folder, showing her the contract inside. You marry me for 1 year. We live together, attend events together, convince everyone, including Soo Jin, that we're a real couple. In exchange, I pay you a salary of $10,000 a month. I cover all expenses for you and the 3 children, including rent, food, medical care, and school tuition. When the year ends, we divorce quietly, and you get a final payment of $100,000. The numbers made Desta sway on her feet. She grabbed the back of the chair to steady herself. That is too much money. For playing the role of my wife in front of business associates and at social events? For dealing with my world and all its complications? It's fair compensation. He watched emotions flicker across her face, too fast to name. Think about those children, Desta. You're killing yourself working 3 jobs. What happens if you get sick? If you're too exhausted to keep going? What happens to them then? It was the exact right thing to say, and he knew it. Her face crumpled slightly before she got control of herself again. This is not a normal thing. Marriage is sacred. In many cultures, marriage was always a business arrangement. Love came later, if at all. Tamin's voice softened slightly. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to like me. I'm asking you to help me solve a problem while I help you solve yours. And after 1 year, we divorce. You take your money and start whatever life you want. Open a business, go back to school, move wherever you choose. The children will have had a year of stability, good food, good schools. You'll have savings and opportunities you don't have now. Desta looked down at the contract, her lips moving as she read the terms. Tamin had made sure everything was clearly written. Nothing hidden or manipulative. He might be ruthless in business, but he wasn't going to trap a desperate woman with legal tricks. "Why me?" she finally asked. "The truth." He considered lying, saying something simple about convenience. But something about Desta demanded honesty. "Because you remind me that not everyone is like Soo-jin. Because you work hard without complaining. Because you put those children before yourself every single day, and that kind of loyalty is rare." He paused. "And because you'll keep it professional. You won't fall in love with me and make things complicated when it's time to end it." Desta's laugh was bitter. "You are very sure of yourself. I'm sure of what people want. Money, power, status. You want none of those things. You want safety for 3 children. That makes you perfect for this arrangement." She read the contract again, more slowly this time. Tamin gave her space, sitting back on his desk, waiting. He'd learned patience in his years building his empire. Some deals needed pressure, but this one needed time. "The children," Desta said slowly. "They would come live here? There's an entire wing of the house that's not being used. 4 bedrooms, a playroom, a bathroom. They would each have their own space. There's a yard where they can play safely. The school district here is excellent. They are good children. They would not cause trouble. I'm not worried about that." And surprisingly, he meant it. Those kids had looked well-behaved and sweet from what he'd observed. Desta closed the folder and looked at him directly for the first time since he'd made his proposal. "If I say yes, there would be rules. Of course. We do not share a bedroom. This is business only. Agreed. You do not touch me, unless we are in public and it is necessary for the appearance. Understood. The children's routine stays stable. They go to bed at 8:30. They eat healthy food. They do their homework. I will not have their lives disrupted more than necessary." Tamin nodded. "Anything else? If you ever hurt them, even with words, the deal is finished. I do not care about the money. They have been through enough pain." The fierceness in her voice made him respect her even more. "I would never hurt children. You have my word on that." Desta studied his face like she was trying to read his soul. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she picked up the folder again. "I need to think about this. 1 day." "Take 2 days. This is a big decision." "1 day is enough." She moved toward the door, then stopped. "If I agree, when would this happen?" "As soon as possible. Soo-jin is escalating her attempts to see me. I need to shut that down before she causes real problems." Desta nodded slowly and left without another word. Tamin watched her go, wondering if he'd just made a brilliant strategic move or the biggest mistake of his life. The next day crawled by. He couldn't focus on work, kept checking his phone even though Desta didn't have his number. He'd told his assistant to send her home early with pay, giving her time to think without the pressure of working in his house. At 7 that evening, his doorbell rang. Tamin opened it to find Desta standing there in a simple dress, her hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. "I have conditions," she said without preamble. "More than I said yesterday." He stepped aside to let her in. "Tell me." They sat in his living room, the space between them careful and measured. Desta pulled out a piece of paper covered in her neat handwriting. "I spoke to a legal aid lawyer today. She looked at your contract. Smart. And she said it is fair, but she suggested changes. First, the money. I want half of it put in, a trust for the children's education. They cannot touch it until they are 18. Done. Second, I want it written that I can end the marriage immediately if you break the rules about the children, and I keep all money earned up to that point. Fair. Anything else? Desta took a deep breath. I want you to meet the children before we do this. If they are afraid of you, if they do not feel safe, I cannot say yes. That surprised him. He'd expected more financial demands, more legal protections. Instead, she wanted him to meet 3 traumatized kids and pass their test. When? Tomorrow. I will bring them here in the afternoon. We will tell them you are a friend, someone who might help us. Nothing about marriage until we are sure. Tamin had negotiated million-dollar deals with dangerous people. He'd stared down threats and never flinched. But the idea of 3 children judging whether he was trustworthy made his stomach tight. What if they don't like me? Then you will find another solution to your problem with your ex-fiancé. Desta's voice was absolute. I will not force them into a home where they are uncomfortable, no matter how much money you offer. He respected that, even as it complicated things. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll make sure we have some things they might enjoy. Does the oldest girl like dolls? The boys like trucks. Mira likes books. Dawit likes drawing. Jonas likes anything that makes noise. A small smile crossed Desta's face. They are good children, but they have been through much loss. They are sometimes quiet, sometimes sad. Do not expect them to be cheerful or immediately trusting. I understand loss, Tamin said quietly. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they were considering settling over them both. Finally, Desta stood. I should go. They are with my neighbor tonight, but I do not like to leave them long. Tamin walked her to the door. Desta, one question. Why are you really considering this? The money matters, I know that, but there's something else. She looked at him with those honey eyes, and for the first time he saw past her careful control to the exhaustion beneath. I am so tired. Every day I am terrified I will fail them, that I will get sick or lose a job or make a mistake that costs them everything. This offer, it is strange and probably foolish, but it is also a chance to breathe. To give them 1 year where they do not see me crying in the bathroom because I cannot pay the electric bill. 1 year where they can just be children. Her voice cracked slightly. Is that selfish? No. Tamin felt that strange tightness in his chest again. It's human. She nodded and left, and he stood in his doorway watching her walk to the bus stop. This proud woman who was considering marrying a stranger to save 3 children who weren't even her own blood. He thought about Soo-jin, who had claimed to love him but stole from him the moment it was convenient. He thought about his parents, who had abandoned him when he was 12 because feeding him was too expensive. He thought about all the people who had betrayed him, used him, or walked away when he needed them. Then he thought about Desta, who had given up everything for 3 orphans and refused to complain about it. Maybe this arrangement would work after all. Mira, Dawit, and Jonas stood in Tamin's massive entryway like 3 small statues, their eyes huge as they took in the marble floors, the high ceilings, the chandelier that probably cost more than every possession they owned combined. Desta held Jonas's hand tightly, and the little boy pressed against her leg, suddenly shy. This is my friend Tamin, Desta said gently in English, then repeated it in Amharic. He has invited us to visit. Tamin crouched down to their level, making himself less intimidating. He'd spent an hour that morning researching how to interact with traumatized children. Hello, I'm glad you came. Are you hungry? I have snacks in the kitchen. Mira, the 8-year-old with her hair in perfect braids, stared at him with solemn dark eyes. Why do you want to help us? Direct. Smart. He liked her immediately. Because your aunt works very hard, and I think she deserves help. And because I have a big empty house that could use some noise and life in it. Are you rich? 6-year-old Dawit asked, his eyes still roaming over the expensive surroundings. Yes. Why? Jonas piped up, his voice small but curious. I worked very hard for a very long time. Come on, I'll show you round. Tamin stood and led them through the house, watching their reactions carefully. They stayed close to Desta, but their natural curiosity began winning over their nervousness. The kitchen made them all stop and stare. It was 3 times the size of their entire apartment. Tamin had prepared a spread of snacks, both American and Ethiopian food that he'd had specially ordered. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got options. Dawit spotted the injera and his face lit up. Aunt Desta, look. They settled around the kitchen table, and slowly the children began to relax. Mira asked careful, intelligent questions about the house. Dawit wanted to know if there were any pets. Jonas mostly ate cookies and swung his legs, humming to himself. After snacks, Tamin showed them the wing that would be theirs if Desta agreed to his proposal. 4 bedrooms, each one bigger than their entire current apartment. Jonas ran from room to room, his earlier shyness forgotten. Dawit found the window seat in one room and immediately claimed it. Mira stood in the doorway of the room with the bookshelves, her expression caught between hope and fear. You like books? Tamin asked her. Yes, sir. Very much. I had these brought in yesterday. They're yours if you want them. And there's a library in town with even more. Mira's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly, trying to be brave. Why would you give us all this? Desta knelt beside her niece, pulling her close. Sometimes people help each other, sweet girl. Sometimes good things happen. But nothing good has happened in a long time, Mira whispered. The words hit Tamin harder than he expected. This child had learned too young that the world was cruel and unfair. He wanted to promise her that would change, but he'd learned not to make promises he might not keep. Instead, he said, Would you like to see the backyard? The yard sealed the deal. It had swings, a slide, a treehouse, and enough space to run without worrying about streets or strangers. The boys ran immediately to the swings, and even Mira's careful control cracked as she followed them, a genuine smile breaking across her face. Desta and Tamin stood on the patio, watching them play. They like it here, Desta said softly. I can see it in their faces. They look like children again instead of small adults carrying too much. Wait, is that a yes? Tamin asked. She turned to look at him, studying his face intently. If I agree to this, you need to know something. I am not good at pretending. If we are to convince people we are married, you will need to teach me how to act in your world. I know nothing about rich people or business or fancy parties. I'll teach you everything you need to know. He meant it. The idea of transforming Desta from a maid into someone who could stand beside him at high society events was actually appealing. She had natural grace and intelligence. She just needed polish. And the children, they cannot know the truth. Not yet. They have lost too much. If they think this is temporary, if they think we are pretending, it will hurt them when it ends. That was trickier. Tamin hadn't considered how the kids would feel when he and Desta divorced in a year. What do we tell them? We tell them we fell in love and got married quickly. We tell them this is real. Desta's voice was firm. When the year ends, we will say we tried, but it did not work. It will hurt them, but not as much as knowing from the start that everything was fake. You want to lie to them. I want to protect them. She crossed her arms, defensive. They need stability, even if it is only for a short time. They need to believe that good things can last. Tamin understood her reasoning, even if it complicated things. Children who knew the marriage was fake might accidentally reveal that truth to others, ruining the entire purpose of the arrangement. All right. We'll tell them it's real. Desta took a shaky breath. Then yes, I will marry you. They stood there, 2 people who barely knew each other, who had just agreed to one of the strangest arrangements either had ever made. The children's laughter floated across the yard, innocent and pure. We should make it official soon, Tamin said. My lawyer can handle the paperwork. We can go to the courthouse Friday morning, tell the children, Friday evening, and they can move in this weekend. So fast. Is there a reason to wait? Desta shook her head slowly. No, fast is better, like removing a bandage. Friday morning arrived too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Desta met Tamin at the courthouse wearing a simple cream-colored dress she'd bought at a thrift store. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. They stood in line behind 3 other couples, all of them looking happy and excited. Desta felt like she might throw up. "You okay?" Tamin asked quietly. "I am committing fraud." "We're getting legally married. That's not fraud. We are lying about why. Lots of people get married for practical reasons. Money, citizenship, convenience. At least we're honest with each other about it." He glanced at her, his dark eyes unreadable. Having second thoughts? She thought about Mira, Dawit, and Jonas. Thought about the electric bill she couldn't pay this month, the school supplies she couldn't afford, the winter coats they would need soon that she had no idea how to buy. No second thoughts. Their turn came. The courthouse clerk looked bored, probably performing her 10th ceremony that day. She had them repeat vows that felt hollow on Desta's tongue. When the clerk told Tamin he could kiss his bride, they both froze. "It's optional," the clerk said, already moving to stamp their certificate. But Tamin stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup Desta's cheek. "We should practice," he murmured, "for when we have to do this in front of others." Before Desta could respond, his lips touched hers. It was meant to be brief, perfunctory, but the moment their mouths met, something electric shot through her body. His lips were soft, warm, and for 3 heartbeats, the courthouse disappeared. There was only this moment, this unexpected spark, this sudden awareness that Tamin was attractive in a way she'd been deliberately not noticing. He pulled back, and she saw surprise in his eyes that probably matched her own. They'd both felt it, that unexpected chemistry neither of them wanted. "Congratulations," the clerk said flatly, handing them their marriage certificate. "Next." They walked out into the bright Los Angeles sunshine as husband and wife, both of them carefully not mentioning what had just happened. That evening they gathered the children in the living room of the mansion. Desta had moved some of their things over already, preparing for the big reveal. The kids sat on the couch, confused about why they were having this serious meeting. Tamin cleared his throat, suddenly nervous in a way he never was during business negotiations. "We have some news. Good news. Desta and I got married today." The silence was deafening. "What?" Mira finally said, her young voice full of confusion. "But you just met him." "Sometimes adults know quickly when something is right," Desta said, the lie tasting bitter in her mouth. "Tamin makes me happy. He wants to take care of all of us, and I said yes." Dawit's eyes filled with tears. "Does this mean we have to leave you?" "No, baby." Desta pulled him close. "It means we all get to stay together. All 4 of us get to live here with Tamin. You get your own rooms, you get to go to a good school, you get to finally have the life you deserve." "Are you going to leave us like Mama and Papa did?" Jonas asked, his small voice breaking everyone's heart. Tamin knelt in front of the little boy. "I'm not going anywhere. This is your home now, for as long as you need it." The lie felt heavier coming from him, knowing that in a year this would all end. But he looked at these 3 small faces, still marked by grief and loss, and he couldn't bring himself to tell them the truth. Desta was right. They needed this stability, even if it was temporary. They needed to believe that sometimes broken things could be fixed, that sometimes people stayed instead of leaving. Mira, always the most cautious, studied them both. "Do you love her?" The question hung in the air. Tamin looked at Desta, this woman he barely knew, this woman who was sacrificing her pride and independence for 3 orphans. "Yes," he said, and part of him wondered if the lie might somehow become true. "I do." That night, after the children were tucked into their new beds in their new rooms, Desta and Tamin sat in his study going over the rules of their arrangement. She'd moved into the bedroom next to his, close enough to hear the children if they needed her in the night. "Soo-jin will hear about our marriage within the week," Tamin said. "My business associates will talk. She'll show up to confront us." "What do I do when that happens?" Stand your ground. Don't let her intimidate you. You're my wife now, at least on paper. That gives you power." Desta laughed bitterly. "I have never had power in my life." "Then it's time to learn." Tamin poured 2 glasses of wine, handing her one. "Tomorrow, we start your transformation. New clothes, new hair, lessons on how to navigate my world. By the time you appear at your first event with me, no one will question whether you belong there. I will never belong in your world. Maybe not, but you'll learn to fake it convincingly enough that it won't matter." He raised his glass. 2 mutually beneficial arrangements. Desta clinked her glass against his, the sound sharp in the quiet room. To 1 year. They drank, and Tamin tried to ignore the fact that he was already starting to care what happened to this woman and her children when their time was up. Caring was dangerous. Caring led to betrayal and pain. But when Desta stood to leave and their hands brushed accidentally, that spark from the courthouse kiss flared again, and Tamin realized he might be in more trouble than he'd planned for. 3 months into the marriage, Soo-jin made her move. She appeared at the charity gala on the arm of an aging businessman, wearing a red dress cut to catch attention and a smile full of malice. Desta saw her first, felt Tamin tense beside her as recognition hit him. "That's her," he murmured. "My ex-fiancée. Stay close to me." Desta had transformed in the past months. Her hair was professionally styled, her emerald dress was designer, and she'd learned to navigate high heels and small talk with surprising grace. But underneath the polish, she was still a woman who'd spent most of her life cleaning houses, and she felt her confidence waver as Soo-jin approached. "Tamin, darling," Soo-jin purred, ignoring Desta completely. "I heard the strangest rumor that you got married. I told everyone it couldn't possibly be true." "It's true." Tamin's arm tightened around Desta's waist. "Soo-jin, meet my wife, Desta." Soo-jin's eyes finally landed on Desta, scanning her from head to toe with barely concealed disdain. "How exotic. Where did you 2 meet?" "She worked for me," Tamin said calmly. "I fell in love with her. Kindness and strength. 2 qualities you never possessed." The insult landed like a slap. Soo-jin's smile turned venomous. How romantic. The billionaire and the maid. Like a fairy tale. She turned to Desta. "Tell me, dear, what's it like going from scrubbing toilets to sleeping in silk sheets? Quite an upgrade, I imagine." Desta felt heat crawl up her neck, but she remembered Tamin's lessons. Never show weakness. Never let them see you bleed. "It's wonderful," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Though I imagine it's not as dramatic as your journey from fiancé to thief. That must have been quite the upgrade, too." Gasps rippled through the nearby guests who'd been pretending not to listen. Soo-jin's face went white with rage. "How dare you! How dare you steal from the man you claim to love?" Desta countered, surprised by her own boldness. "How dare you show up here and try to humiliate me for building a life with him after you destroyed his trust? At least, I'm honest about who I am. Can you say the same?" Tamin looked at Desta with something like pride in his eyes. He pulled her closer, dropped a kiss on her temple that sent shivers down her spine. "We're done here, Soo-jin. Go back to whatever rock you crawled out from under." They walked away, leaving Soo-jin standing alone in her red dress, fury radiating from every pore. Other guests whispered behind their hands, and Desta knew by tomorrow the whole story would be circulating through Los Angeles high society. In the car ride home, Tamin couldn't stop smiling. "That was perfect. The way you stood up to her, you were magnificent. I was terrified. You didn't show it." He reached over, took her hand. The gesture was supposed to be casual, but the contact sent electricity racing up Desta's arm. "You're a natural at this. Better than I expected. Because I am a good liar." The words came out more bitter than she intended. Tamin's smile faded. "Because you're strong. There's a difference." They rode in silence for a moment, hands still joined. Finally, Desta said, "She is very beautiful. She's poison wrapped in pretty packaging. Did you love her?" The question hung in the air. Tamin was quiet for so long that Desta thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "I thought I did. Now I think I love the idea of her. The person I wanted her to be, not who she really was. That is sad. What's sad is that I let her betrayal turn me cold. I stopped trusting anyone, stopped believing in anything except money and power." He looked at her in the dim light of the car. "Meeting you and the children, it's reminded me that good people still exist. People who do the right thing even when it costs them everything." Desta's throat tightened. "We are not saints. We made a deal that benefits us both. You made a deal that benefits 3 orphans. There's a difference." His thumb stroked over her knuckles. Probably an unconscious gesture, but it made her heart race. "Don't pretend you're as mercenary as I am. You're not." When they arrived home, the house was quiet. The children were asleep, watched over by the nanny Tamin had hired to help during the evenings when they had events. They climbed the stairs together, stopped at their respective bedroom doors. "Thank you," Tamin said, "for tonight, for everything. It is what we agreed to. It's more than that now." He stepped closer, and Desta's breath caught. "Tell me you feel it too. This thing between us that wasn't supposed to happen." She should lie, should keep the boundaries clear and professional. But 3 months of living together, of watching him play with the children, of late-night conversations over wine, of accidental touches that sparked like lightning, had worn down her defenses. "I feel it. I promised you this would stay professional," he said, his voice rough. "I promised I wouldn't touch you unless necessary for appearances. I remember. Tell me to go to my room. Tell me to keep my distance. Because if you don't, I'm going to kiss you, and this time it won't be for practice or show." Desta knew she should say the words, knew she should protect her heart from this man who would divorce her in 9 months and send her back to her old life. But standing there in the hallway, with his dark eyes burning into hers, she couldn't make herself care about consequences or contracts or common sense. "Don't go to your room," she whispered. Tamin closed the distance between them, his mouth capturing hers with a hunger that made her knees weak. This wasn't like the courthouse kiss, brief and surprising. This was deliberate, intense, full of 3 months of denied wanting. His hands tangled in her carefully styled hair, ruining it, and she didn't care. Her back hit the wall as he pressed against her, all hard muscle and expensive cologne and barely restrained desire. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads touching. "This is a bad idea," Tamin said. "Terrible," Desta agreed. "It will complicate everything." "I know." "We should stop." But instead, she grabbed his tie and pulled him toward her bedroom. They stumbled through the door, mouths fused together, hands frantically removing expensive evening wear. Every touch revealed new skin, new places to explore, new sounds to draw from each other's throats. They made love with an intensity that surprised them both. It was desperate and passionate, full of months of tension finally breaking free. Afterward, they lay tangled in her sheets, both knowing they'd just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. "What happens now?" Desta asked quietly. Tamin traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "I don't know. This wasn't part of the plan. Maybe we pretend it did not happen. Go back to our arrangement. Could you do that?" He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "Could you pretend you don't feel what I know you're feeling?" Desta wanted to say yes, wanted to be strong enough, to compartmentalize this as just physical release. But she'd never been good at lying, especially to herself. "No. Then we deal with it. We acknowledge that this arrangement has become something else. Something real." He hesitated. "Unless you want to end the contract early." "Do you?" "No, God, no." He pulled her closer. "I know I shouldn't want this. I know I'm supposed to be protecting myself from more betrayal and pain. But I'm tired of being alone. Tired of pretending I don't care about anything." They stayed awake talking until dawn, wrapped in each other, discussing what their relationship would look like now. They agreed to keep it hidden from the children for now, not wanting to confuse them. They agreed to be honest with each other, even when honesty was hard. And they agreed that when the year was up, they would reassess everything rather than automatically divorce. It wasn't a declaration of love or a promise of forever, but it was real. And after months of pretending, real felt like a gift. The next morning, life shifted into a new normal. Tamin was more relaxed, smiling at breakfast in a way that made Mira tilt her head curiously. Desta found herself touching him more. Casual brushes of hands as they passed in the hallway, a hand on his arm during dinner. The children noticed but said nothing, seeming pleased that their aunt and her husband appeared happy. Over the following weeks, their physical relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain separate rooms for appearance's sake, but most nights Desta fell asleep in Tamin's arms. He learned what made her sigh, what made her gasp, what made her laugh. She learned that beneath his cold business exterior was a man capable of surprising tenderness. But fairy tales don't last forever, and reality has a way of intruding at the worst moments. 4 months into the marriage, Desta's older sister Meheret arrived from Ethiopia unannounced. She took one look at the mansion, at Tamin, at the children in their expensive clothes, and her face closed with suspicion. "We need to talk," she told Desta in Amharic. "Alone." They sat in the garden while Tamin took the children to the park, giving the sisters privacy. Meheret wasted no time. "What is happening here? How did you go from a maid to married to a rich man in months? It is not natural." "I fell in love," Desta said, the lie coming easier now after months of practice. "You expect me to believe that? A Korean billionaire fell in love with his Ethiopian maid and married her immediately. Desta, I raised you. Do not insult me with fairy tales." Tears stung Desta's eyes. "Why can you not just be happy for me?" "Because something is wrong here. That man, he looks at you like you are a possession he owns. And you look terrified half the time. What kind of deal did you make with him?" "It is not a deal. It is a marriage." "Built on what?" "Love does not happen this fast. Trust does not happen this fast." Meheret grabbed Desta's hands. "Tell me the truth. Did he threaten you, force you somehow? Because if he did, we will find a way out. We will go to the authorities." "He did not force me. I chose this." Desta pulled her hands away. "You are always so suspicious, always believing the worst. Maybe something good finally happened to me. Maybe I deserve this happiness. I want you to be happy, but this does not feel right." Meheret stood, her face set in stubborn lines Desta knew too well. "I am staying here until I am satisfied you are safe. If he is a good man like you claim, he will not mind." Meheret moved into one of the guest rooms, and the atmosphere in the house changed immediately. She watched Tamin constantly, questioned everything, made it clear she thought he was using Desta for some mysterious purpose. At dinner, she asked pointed questions about his business, his past relationships, his intentions. Tamin endured it with surprising patience, but Desta could see the strain in the tightness around his eyes. Having someone constantly questioning his motives, looking for evidence of wrongdoing, reminded him too much of Soo-jin's betrayal and the suspicions that followed. One night, after Meheret had been there a week, Desta found Tamin in his study staring at nothing. She closed the door behind her. "I am sorry about my sister. She loves you, she's protecting you, I can't fault her for that. She thinks you are using me. She's not entirely wrong." He looked at her with tired eyes. "This did start as a business arrangement. We haven't told her it's become real because we haven't even defined what real means for us." Desta sat beside him. "What does it mean?" "I don't know. I know I care about you. I know I look forward to coming home to you and the children. I know that what we share in bed goes beyond just physical satisfaction." He ran a hand through his hair. "But I also know I'm still damaged from Soo-jin. I don't trust easily. I'm not sure I know how to love someone properly. And I am still that maid who cleans houses," Desta said softly. I wear nice clothes now and can make conversation at fancy parties, but inside, I still feel like I do not belong. Like, at any moment someone will realize I am a fraud." They sat in silence, two broken people trying to figure out if their brokenness could somehow fit together into something whole. Finally, Tamin pulled her close. "Your sister wants proof this is real. What if we showed her? How? Let me plan something. A gesture that shows her I'm serious about you. About all of you." 3 days later, Tamin gathered everyone in the living room. Meheret sat with her arms crossed, her expression skeptical. The children bounced with curiosity. Desta stood uncertain, unsure what Tamin had planned. He pulled out a folder of legal documents. "These are adoption papers. I want to formally adopt Mira, Dawit, and Jonas. Make them my legal children, not just my wife's niece and nephews. They'll have my name, my protection, and all the legal rights of biological children." The room went silent. Mira's eyes filled with tears. The boys looked confused, not fully understanding the significance. Meheret's suspicious expression cracked, showing uncertainty for the first time. "This means even if something happened to Desta, the children would stay with me," Tamin continued. "They would inherit from me. They would be mine in every legal sense." He looked at Meheret. "If I were using your sister, if this were some kind of scheme, I would not bind myself to 3 children for life. Adoption is permanent. There is no getting out of it." Meheret studied him for a long moment. Finally, she asked, "Why would you do this?" "Because I love them." The words came out simple and true. "They've become my family, and family is forever." Mira launched herself at Tamin, wrapping her arms around his neck and sobbing. The boys followed, all 3 children clinging to him like he was their lifeline. Desta pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he was offering. Meheret's eyes were wet. "You are serious about this? About all of them?" "Completely serious." Tamin met her gaze over the children's heads. "I know you don't trust me yet. I know I'll have to earn that trust, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Your sister and these children, they're the best thing that's happened to me in years. I'm not letting them go." That night, after the children were asleep and the adoption papers were signed, after Meheret had finally smiled at Tamin and said she could see he truly cared, Desta and Tamin lay in his bed talking quietly. "Thank you," she said, "for the adoption, for everything you have done for them. They're good kids. They deserve security. But in 9 months, when our contract ends, what happens? You will still be their father. We will still be connected." Tamin pulled her closer. "Maybe the contract doesn't need to end. Maybe this fake marriage has become real enough that we should make it permanent." Desta's heart raced. "Are you saying you want to stay married? Truly married?" "I'm saying I'm falling for you, Desta. I'm saying that what started as a business deal has become the most genuine thing in my life. I'm saying I don't want this to end." He kissed her softly. "But I'm also saying I'm terrified, because the last person I trusted destroyed me, and if you did the same, I don't think I would survive it. I would never hurt you intentionally." That's what Soo-jin said too. The words hung between them, a reminder that their foundation was built on contracts and pretense, not the slow building of trust that healthy relationships needed. They had moved too fast, built too much on shaky ground, and now they were in too deep to easily find their way back to safety. But as Desta fell asleep in Tamin's arms, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. That love built on mutual need could transform into love built on mutual choice. She didn't know that outside forces were already working to tear them apart, that Soo-jin's humiliation at the gala had transformed into something darker and more dangerous, that the happiness they'd found was about to be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. Sometimes the hardest part of falling in love is not the falling itself, but landing safely at the bottom without shattering into pieces. The call came at 3 in the morning. Desta woke to Tamin's phone ringing, his body going rigid beside her before he grabbed it. She watched his face drain of color as he listened, watched his jaw clench so tight she thought his teeth might crack. "I'll be right there," he said, his voice flat and dangerous in a way that made her stomach drop. "What happened?" Desta asked as he threw on clothes. "The children are gone. Someone took them from their rooms." The words didn't make sense at first. Desta's brain refused to process them. Then reality crashed over her and she was moving, running down the hall to their wing. 3 empty beds, windows open to the night air. No sign of struggle. Just gone. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her vision tunneled and she would have fallen if Tamin hadn't caught her. "We will find them," he said, his voice steel. "I promise you, we will find them." Within an hour, the house was full of people. Tamin's security team, people Desta had never met before who looked like they could kill without hesitation, all of them working phones and computers. The police were notified but stood aside as Tamin's people took over the investigation. "Who would do this?" Desta asked, her voice breaking. "Who would take children?" "Someone who wants to hurt me." Tamin's face was a mask of cold fury. "Someone who knows that threatening me directly wouldn't work, so they went after what I care about." 2 hours later, they had their answer. A video arrived on Tamin's phone. Kwang Ho, his business rival, sat in a chair with Mira, Dawit, and Jonas huddled together behind him. The children looked terrified but unharmed. "Hello, old friend," Kwang Ho said, his smile cruel. "You have something I want, 50% ownership of your shipping operations and access to your accounts. In exchange, you get these lovely children back safely. You have 24 hours to decide. Oh, and if you involve the police beyond the initial report, I'll know, and the children will pay the price." The video ended. Desta made a sound like a wounded animal. "He has my babies. He has them. And I'm going to get them back." Tamin's voice was ice. He turned to his security team. "Find him. I don't care what it takes. Find where he's keeping them." Meheret appeared in the doorway, her face stricken. "How did this happen? How did someone break into this house with all your security?" It was a good question. Tamin's head of security looked sick. "Someone inside helped. Had to be. The cameras were disabled, the alarms bypassed. Whoever took them knew exactly where to go and how to avoid detection." "Check everyone," Tamin ordered. "Staff, guards, everyone who has access to this house. Someone betrayed us." The next hours were agony. Desta couldn't eat, couldn't sit still, could barely breathe. She paced the house like a ghost, jumping at every phone ring, praying for news. Tamin worked his connections, called in favors from people who operated in the shadows of Los Angeles, people whose names never appeared in newspapers but whose power was absolute. Meheret stayed close to Desta, holding her when she broke down crying, whispering prayers in Amharic. "They will come home," she said. "They have to come home." By noon, they had a location, an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. Kwang Ho had gotten sloppy, confident that his threat would keep Tamin from acting, but he hadn't counted on the extent of Tamin's resources or his willingness to go to war. "I'm coming with you," Desta said when Tamin prepared to leave with his security team. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. They are my children. I am coming. Desta, please. I can't focus on getting them out safely if I'm worried about you. And I cannot sit here doing nothing while they are scared and alone." She grabbed his arm. "I need to be there when you find them. I need them to see my face and know they are safe. Please." Something in her desperation reached him. Against every instinct screaming at him to leave her protected at home, he nodded. "You stay in the car until we confirm it's secure. You don't move until I say so." The warehouse was exactly the kind of place villains used in movies. Dark, empty, full of shadows and echoes. Tamin's team moved in with military precision while Desta waited in the armored car, her nails digging into her palms so hard they drew blood. Gunshots. 3 quick pops that made her scream, then silence that seemed to last forever. Finally, Tamin's voice came through the radio. "We have them. They're safe. Desta, you can come in now." She ran through the warehouse, following the sound of crying children, and found them. All three of them clinging to Tamin like he was their salvation. Mira was crying so hard she couldn't breathe. The boys had their faces buried against his chest. And Tamin, this cold businessman who never showed weakness, had tears streaming down his face. Desta crashed into all of them, pulling them into her arms, checking for injuries, whispering reassurances in English and Amharic. They were okay. Scared, but okay. No one had hurt them beyond the terror of being taken from their beds in the night. Kwang Ho was on the floor, hands zip-tied behind his back, blood streaming from his nose. He'd put up a fight and lost. Tamin's people had him secured, were already making calls to ensure he would face consequences that went far beyond legal prosecution. "Take the children to the car," Tamin told Desta gently. "I need to finish things here." She wanted to argue, wanted to know what finishing things meant, but the children needed her more than she needed answers. She guided them out, wrapped them in blankets, held them close as they drove home. Back at the mansion, a doctor checked them over while Desta refused to let go of their hands. Meheret made hot chocolate, fussed over them, called them brave. By the time Tamin returned 2 hours later, the children were finally calm enough to sleep, all three of them curled together in Mira's bed with Desta sitting beside them. "They are okay?" Tamin asked from the doorway. "Physically, yes. Emotionally." Desta shook her head. "Time will tell." He looked exhausted, his suit rumpled and stained with blood that she hoped wasn't his. "I need to talk to you, alone." They went to his study. Desta steeled herself for whatever was coming. "Did you kill him?" "No, but I made sure he'll spend the rest of his life regretting he ever knew my name." Tamin poured them both whiskey, drank his in one swallow. "We found the person who helped him. My night security guard. Kwang Ho paid him $50,000 to disable the system and unlock the children's windows." "What happened to him?" "The police have him. He'll face charges for kidnapping and conspiracy." Tamin's jaw clenched. But none of that matters compared to the real problem. This happened because of me. Because of my business, my enemies, my world. Those children were taken because someone wanted to hurt me. That is not your fault. It's completely my fault. I brought you into this life. I convinced you to marry me, to bring the children here, and now they've been traumatized because of it. Desta stood, grabbed his face between her hands, forced him to look at her. "Stop. Those children were hungry and cold in an apartment that was falling apart. They had no future, no safety, no hope. Yes, tonight was terrible. But every other night for the past months, they have gone to sleep warm and fed and loved. They have had stability. They have had you. What if next time I can't save them? What if next time someone succeeds in hurting them to get to me? Then we will deal with it together. That is what families do." He pulled her close, buried his face in her neck. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I put you all in danger." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other, processing the terror of the day. Finally, Tamin pulled back. "There's something else. Something I need to tell you before you hear it from someone else." Desta's stomach tightened. "What?" "Sujin contacted me this morning. She claims she's pregnant with my child." The world tilted. Desta stepped back, staring at him like he was a stranger. "What?" "It's a lie. It has to be. We haven't been together since before I met you. The timing doesn't work." "Are you sure?" "Yes, completely sure." But doubt flickered in his eyes, just for a second, and Desta saw it. "But you are not certain. There is a possibility." "No, there isn't. She's lying to manipulate me, to try to get back into my life. She saw us at that gala, saw that I'd moved on, and she couldn't stand it." Desta wanted to believe him, but the events of the day had shattered her sense of security, reminded her that she was still just a maid playing dress-up in a world she didn't understand. "I need time to think. Desta, please, don't let her destroy what we have." "What do we have, Tamin?" A marriage built on a contract. A relationship that started as pretend and became real so fast, neither of us stopped to question if it was genuine or just convenient. Tears spilled down her cheeks. My children were kidnapped today because I brought them into your dangerous world. Now your ex-fiancée claims she is carrying your baby. This is too much. It is all too much. So what are you saying? I am saying I need space to think clearly. I am saying that maybe my sister was right to be suspicious. I am saying that I do not know if I can trust my own feelings anymore, let alone trust you. The words landed like physical blows. Tamin's face went blank, his walls coming back up. Fine. Take your space. Take whatever you need. But don't make decisions based on fear and lies. How do I know what are lies and what is truth? How do I know anything in this house is real? Because I love you. The words came out raw and desperate. Because despite everything, despite my damage and my fears, I fell in love with you. That's real. Desta wanted to say it back, wanted to throw herself into his arms and pretend everything would be okay. But the children were asleep down the hall, traumatized because of her choices, and Soo-jin's claim hung over them like a poison cloud. I cannot do this right now, she whispered. I need to focus on the children, on making sure they feel safe again. Everything else will have to wait. She left him standing in his study, and it felt like leaving behind a piece of herself. But she couldn't think about her heart when 3 small hearts depended on her to keep them safe. That night, she slept in Mira's room, surrounded by all 3 children, listening to them breathe and occasionally cry out in their sleep. Meheret checked on them hourly, her expression grim. You are leaving him, Meheret said quietly. It wasn't a question. I do not know yet. But you are thinking about it. Yes. Meheret nodded slowly. I was wrong about him. I see that now. He loves you and the children. He risked everything to get them back. But love is not always enough, is it? No, Desta whispered. Sometimes it is not. Morning came gray and cold. Tamin was already gone, leaving a note that he had business to handle but would be home by evening. The children were clingy and frightened, not wanting to let Desta out of their sight. She spent the day with them, playing quiet games, reading stories, reassuring them over and over that they were safe. But she wasn't sure she believed it herself anymore. 3 days after the kidnapping, DNA results proved what Tamin had insisted from the beginning. Soo-jin's baby was not his. She'd been lying, trying one last desperate manipulation to wedge herself back into his life. Tamin's lawyer delivered the results personally, along with legal papers ensuring Soo-jin would face consequences for her false claims and continued harassment. He brought the results to Desta immediately, his hands shaking as he held out the folder. I told you it was a lie. Desta read the papers 3 times, relief and guilt warring inside her. I am sorry I doubted you. I understand why you did. Tamin sat heavily on the couch, exhaustion written in every line of his body. Everything happened so fast. The kidnapping, her claim, it was designed to make you doubt everything. That's what manipulative people do. They create chaos and fear, then use that chaos to control you. But I should have trusted you. You were protecting the children. You were scared. I can't fault you for that. He looked at her with eyes that held too much pain. But I need to know, Desta. When you have space to think, when the fear settles, what do you want? Do you want to stay in this marriage? Or do you want to take the children and walk away? It was the question she'd been asking herself for 3 days straight. Walking away would be safer, simpler. She could take the money from their contract, move somewhere quiet, raise the children away from business rivals and kidnapping attempts and ex-fiancés who couldn't let go. But she'd also be walking away from the man she'd fallen in love with. Walking away from the first real home the children had known since their parents died. Walking away from possibility. I want to stay, she said quietly. But things need to change. Tell me what you need. Anything. I need you to be less involved in the dangerous parts of your business. I know you cannot walk away completely, But those children cannot survive another trauma like this one. Neither can I. Already done. I've been shifting my investments, moving away from operations that attract dangerous attention. It will take time, but I'm committed to making this life safer. I need honesty, always, even when the truth is hard or ugly or might hurt me. No more secrets. Agreed, complete honesty. And I need us to start over in some ways. We rushed into this. Let passion and desperation drive us. I want to actually date you. Learn about you without contracts and pretense. Tamin smiled for the first time in days. You want to date your husband? Is that so strange? Most people date before marriage, not after. We have never been like most people. Desta moved closer, took his hands in hers. I love you. I think I have loved you since that first night when you followed me home and saw me with the children. But I am also scared of what loving you means. So yes, I want to date you. I want to build something real that isn't based on contracts or convenience or desperation. I can do that. He pulled her into his lap, held her close. I'll court you properly. Take you to dinner, bring you flowers, win your heart the way I should have from the beginning. They sat like that, wrapped in each other, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally beginning to lift. The children were seeing a therapist, working through their trauma. Meheret had extended her stay, helping with their healing. Soo-jin was facing legal consequences and had finally accepted that Tamin was lost to her forever. Over the next months, Tamin kept his promise. He took Desta on dates, just the two of them, leaving the children with Meheret. They went to restaurants where they talked for hours, learning each other's stories properly. They went to movies and parks and art galleries. He brought her flowers every week, left love notes on her pillow, showed her in 1,000 small ways that she mattered to him. They also went to couples therapy, working through the trauma of the kidnapping and the weak foundation their relationship had been built on. It was hard work, uncomfortable work, but it slowly transformed their marriage from something based on necessity to something based on genuine choice. The children healed too, slowly. They had nightmares sometimes, but less frequently. They laughed more, played more, started to trust that this home was permanent. The adoption became final, making them legally and completely Tamin's children. Mira started calling him Dad without prompting. The boys followed her lead. A year after they'd first met, Tamin proposed properly, got down on one knee in the same courthouse where they'd gotten married the first time, and asked Desta if she would truly be his wife, not because of a contract, but because she chose him. She said yes through happy tears, and they renewed their vows with the children present. Mira served as maid of honor, the boys were ring bearers, and Meheret cried from start to finish. This time, when the officiant told Tamin to kiss his bride, the kiss was full of genuine love, not surprise or obligation. 6 months later, Desta stood in the bathroom staring at a positive pregnancy test, her heart racing with joy and fear. She found Tamin in his study, going over legitimate business proposals that had nothing to do with dangerous rivals or illegal operations. We need to talk, she said. He looked up immediately, concern crossing his face. What's wrong? Nothing is wrong, everything is right. She handed him the test. We are going to have a baby. The way his face transformed, from confusion to understanding to pure joy, made her fall in love with him all over again. He picked her up, spun her around, kissed her until they were both breathless. Are you happy? She asked. I know we did not plan this. I'm beyond happy. I'm ecstatic, terrified, but ecstatic. He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. A baby. Our baby. They told the children that evening at dinner. Mira squealed and immediately started planning how she'd help with the baby. Dawit wanted to know if it would be a boy or girl. Jonas asked if they could name it after him. The house filled with excited chatter and joy, and for the first time in her life, Desta felt completely certain that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Desta's body changed, growing rounder with their child. Tamin was attentive and gentle, treating her like she was made of glass. He talked to her belly every night, telling their unborn baby about the family waiting to meet them. The children drew pictures for the nursery, helped pick out baby clothes, argued good-naturedly about names. When Desta went into labor on a warm spring evening, Tamin was beside her through every contraction, every push, every moment of pain and triumph. And when their daughter finally entered the world, screaming and perfect, he cried openly. They named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope that broken things could be healed. Hope that love could grow from the strangest beginnings. Hope that family wasn't just about blood, but about choice and commitment, and showing up even when things got hard. 5 years later, Desta stood in the garden watching Tamin play with all 4 children. Hope toddled after her older siblings, determined to keep up despite her short legs. Mira was 13 now, beautiful and smart, and confident in ways that made Desta's heart swell with pride. The boys were energetic and sweet, already showing signs of the good men they would become. Meheret had moved to Los Angeles permanently, living in a house Tamin had bought for her nearby. She visited often, spoiling her nieces and nephews shamelessly. Soo Jin was a distant memory, remarried to someone else and finally moved on. The business empire Tamin had built was now completely legitimate, successful without the dangerous elements that had once defined it. Desta had gone back to school, was studying social work so she could help other families in situations like hers had been. She worked with immigrant communities, helping people navigate systems that seemed designed to break them. It gave her purpose beyond being a wife and mother, though she treasured those roles too. That evening, after the children were in bed, Desta and Tamin sat on their patio watching the sunset. He pulled her close, kissed her temple. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night, when you asked why you should trust me? I said many things. You said you needed to know if I was real, if any of this was real." He turned her to face him. "Is it real now? After everything we've been through, all the mistakes and fears and hard work, do you believe we're real?" Desta looked at this man who had started as her employer, become her contract husband, and transformed into her true partner. This man who had given her children a future and given her a love she'd never thought possible. "Yes," she said simply. "This is the most real thing I have ever known." "Good." He smiled, that smile that still made her heart race even after years of marriage. "Because I plan to spend forever proving it to you." They kissed as the sun set, 2 people who had found each other in the unlikeliest way possible, and built something beautiful from desperation and need, and eventually, genuine love. Later that night, wrapped in each other's arms in their bed, Desta thought about the scared woman she'd been when Tamin first followed her home. She'd been surviving, barely, with no hope for anything better. Now she was thriving, surrounded by love and security and possibility. "What are you thinking about?" Tamin murmured sleepily. "About how grateful I am that you caught me stealing leftovers." He laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "Best theft I ever witnessed. Best decision I ever made." "Stealing food?" "No, saying yes when you asked me to marry you. Even though it was crazy and probably should not have worked, I said yes. And that yes changed everything." Tamin pulled her closer, his lips finding hers in the darkness. They made love slowly, tenderly, the way people do when they've learned each other's bodies and hearts completely. And afterwards, as they drifted toward sleep, Desta felt nothing but peace. Their story hadn't been traditional. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every moment of fear and doubt and hard work. Because on the other side of all that struggle was this: a family built on choice, a love built on honesty, and a forever that felt real enough to believe in. Subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed this story. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers around the world.